You know how they say, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, maybe we should add, and don't judge a philosopher by his mustache.
Uh-huh. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Because we're diving into the mind of Friedrich Nietzsche, the man, the mustache, and those seriously intense ideas. We're going deep into Twilight of the Idols, the Antichrist.
And it's a wild ride, even for seasoned philosophy fans.
Definitely not your beach read philosophy, but that's why we're here, to break it down, make it relatable. So if you're thinking, Nietzsche, isn't that the God is dead guy? You're in the right place.
Exactly. We're cutting through the academic jargon to uncover why his work still matters today.
Okay, so Nietzsche throws out this phrase, Twilight of the Idols, and honestly, it sounds kind of ominous. What's he getting at?
Think of it like this. Imagine shining a spotlight on the values and beliefs we often just accept as truth, the things we don't even question.
The stuff we consider, like rock solid.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Nietzsche wants us to take those idols, those unquestioned assumptions, and see if they hold up under scrutiny.
He's like that friend at a party who asks the really uncomfortable questions. Everyone's a little squeamish, but it gets you thinking.
Exactly. And one of those uncomfortable questions revolves around his idea of the will to power.
Which, honestly, when I first heard it, sounded a little aggressive, even kind of scary. Like something out of a superhero comic book, you know?
Yeah, it's easily misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Nietzsche isn't talking about brute force or dominating others. It's much more nuanced than that. Think of it more as this inner drive.
We all have it.
He'd argue, yes. It's the drive to overcome challenges, to strive to reach our full potential.
So like an athlete pushing their limits to win a race, or an artist pushing themselves creatively.
Exactly. But it goes beyond individual ambition, too. Nietzsche saw this will to power as woven into the fabric of everything. It's what shapes history, drives cultures, even entire civilizations.
Wow. Okay, so it's a powerful force, but how does this play out in the real world? Did Nietzsche give any examples?
He actually uses the decline of 19th century Germany as a prime example. He criticized what he saw as blind nationalism and a lack of individual striving in his time.
So he's not just talking about personal ambition, he's also looking at how this will to power plays out on a societal level.
Exactly. In Twilight of the Idols, he writes, I distrust all systems. The will to system is a lack of integrity. He felt Germany had become too obsessed with systems and lost sight of individual greatness. He often contrasted this with the era of Goethe.
Goethe, the writer.
Yes. Nietzsche saw him as someone who really embodied this striving for self-expression and excellence. So, in a way, Nietzsche's calling for a revolution, but not in the political sense, more like a revolution of the mind, a reassessment of what truly drives us.
A complete reevaluation of, well, everything. And that actually leads us to another one of Nietzsche's bombshell ideas, the revaluation of values. It's like he's saying, hold on, who wrote the rule book on good and evil? Maybe it's time for a rewrite.
That's the core of it, yeah. Nietzsche challenges the very foundations of traditional morality, especially Christian morality, which he saw as suppressing our natural instincts.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're talking about some seriously deep stuff here. When he talks about Christianity, what's he actually criticizing?
Well, remember how we were talking about the will to power? He saw Christianity, with its emphasis on humility, self-denial, turning the other cheek, as promoting what he called a slave morality.
Slave morality. Now that's a loaded term.
It is, and we're going to unpack that more in just a bit. But it's important to remember that Nietzsche is using this to describe a system of values that he believed originated from a place of weakness and resentment. And he contrasts this with what he calls master morality.
Master morality versus slave morality. So two completely different ways of looking at the world.
Exactly. Master morality arises from a place of strength and self-affirmation, valuing things like pride, ambition, achievement.
So with master morality, it's more about like owning your power, going after what you want.
In a way, yes. But again, it's more complex than that. And we're going to delve into those nuances later on.
Got it. So it's not like he's saying one is good and one is bad. He's just pointing out that these two very different sets of values exist, and they shape how we see the world and our place in it.
Exactly. And Nietzsche's not necessarily advocating for one over the other. He's more interested in exposing how these systems shape our beliefs and behaviors, often unconsciously.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to humanity and saying, take a good look. Are these your values? Or are they something you've inherited and never questioned?
And that's where his philosophy becomes incredibly relevant to us today, especially in this age of information overload. Think about how easy it is to get swept up in the latest trends, opinions, or ideologies. Right.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like everyone's shouting their opinions from the rooftops, and it's hard to know what to believe.
Exactly. And Nietzsche's call to reevaluate our values encourages us to hit the pause button, to think critically, to become conscious architects of our own beliefs, rather than just inheriting them passively.
So it's not about blindly accepting any one system, but about developing the self-awareness to choose what resonates with us, to define what truly matters. It's a call to authenticity, to self-discovery.
Precisely. And Nietzsche doesn't stop there. He takes this journey of self-discovery to a whole other level with his concept of eternal recurrence.
Ah, yes, eternal recurrence. This is where things get really interesting. But before we dive into that cosmic abyss, we need to take a quick pause. Stay with us.
Okay, we're back, and wow, eternal recurrence. This is heavy stuff, even for, a deep dive into Nietzsche. It's definitely one of those concepts that can make your head spin.
Just a little bit. It's not exactly lighthearted cocktail party conversation, is it?
Not unless you really want to get people thinking. But you're right, it's easy to get caught up in trying to wrap your head around it.
So can you walk us through it? Like, what's the core idea behind this eternal recurrence thing?
Imagine this. Your life, every joy, every struggle, every triumph, even that embarrassing moment you wish you could forget. All of it happening again and again, an infinite loop. How would that feel?
Yeah.
What would that make you think about?
Honestly, kind of makes me want to make some different choices right now.
Exactly. And that's the point. It's not about a literal replay of your life. It's a thought experiment. It forces us to confront the weight of our actions and choices. Like, if you knew you had to relive your life exactly as it is, an infinite number of times, would you embrace it? Or would you have some regrets, some things you'd change?
I'm starting to see how this ties into everything else we've talked about. The will to power, reevaluating values.
Right.
It's all connected to this idea of living a life that's, I don't know, worthy of an encore.
Yes, exactly. It's about asking ourselves, what kind of life are we creating?
So not about seeking pleasure or avoiding pain, but more about finding meaning, purpose, even if it's hard.
Precisely. Nietzsche even called it amor fati, a love of fate, embracing the totality of our experiences, the good and the bad, because it's all part of what makes us who we are.
Amor fati, that's powerful, but also a little daunting, right? I mean, how do you just decide to love the tough parts of life, the failures, the heartbreaks? It's kind of human nature to want to avoid those things.
And Nietzsche never said it was easy. He saw this acceptance, this embracing of everything, even the painful stuff, as a path to freedom, a way to take radical responsibility for our own lives.
Okay, I'm with you. It's a challenge, for sure. But this eternal recurrence, it's less like a punishment and more like, oh, maybe a mirror. It's reflecting back to us the choices we make and the life we're building.
A powerful image, right? And it actually brings us to another common misconception about Nietzsche.
You mean the whole idea that he was a nihilist? Because honestly, yeah, when you first hear about Nietzsche, you hear about God is dead and questioning everything. It's easy to see how people might get that impression.
It's understandable, but it's a fundamental misreading of his work. While Nietzsche definitely saw nihilism, that belief in nothingness, as a real danger, he saw it as something to move through, not a final destination.
So he's not saying life is meaningless, give up all hope. It's more like, okay, if the old answers don't apply anymore, then what?
Exactly. And for Nietzsche, that then what is where things get really interesting. This is where the Übermensch comes in.
Ah, yes, the Superman. But before we go any further, let's be clear. We're not talking about capes and tights here, right?
Definitely not. The Übermensch isn't about some superhuman being swooping in to save the day. It's more of a blueprint for a new kind of human, one who creates their own values, embraces their will to power, and lives life as, a work of art.
So less about leaping tall buildings in a single bound, more about leaping over the limitations we set for ourselves.
Exactly. And this Superman ideal, it's deeply connected to everything we've been discussing, the will to power, eternal recurrence, reevaluating our values. It's about striving to become the best, most authentic version of ourselves, a version that could face even an eternity of existence and say yes.
Wow, that's intense, but also inspiring in a way. It's a high bar.
It is. And I think it's important to remember that Nietzsche isn't giving us some rigid set of rules to follow. It's more like he's giving us a new way of thinking, tools for navigating this crazy thing we call life.
Tools we can use to build a life worth repeating, maybe.
Exactly. And those tools are just as relevant today as they were in Nietzsche's time, maybe even more so. Because we're grappling with so much change, rapid technology, shifting social norms. The questions Nietzsche was asking are even more pressing today.
Questions about what is good and evil. What does it even mean to exist? What's our responsibility to ourselves, to each other, to the world? These are big questions, but they're not just abstract philosophy. They're at the very heart of what it means to be human in the 21st century.
And while Nietzsche might not give us easy answers, he definitely gives us a new perspective. He challenges us to question everything, even those beliefs we hold most dear, and to create our own path in a world that doesn't come with a map.
It's a call to wake up, become more aware, more alive. And that's definitely a journey worth taking. But we're not done yet. Up next, we're tackling one of Nietzsche's most scathing critiques, his views on Christianity. Buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting. All right, so we're back, and we've gone deep on the will to power, eternal recurrence. But there's one more Nietzschean bombshell we need to unpack. His views on Christianity. And let's just say, he wasn't exactly holding back.
Yeah, holding back isn't exactly in Nietzsche's vocabulary, is it? Especially when it comes to this topic.
No, definitely not. I mean, he literally wrote a book called The Antichrist. Doesn't get much more direct than that.
Hard to miss the message there.
Exactly. So what's at the heart of Nietzsche's critique of Christianity? Was it like a personal thing for him or more of a philosophical showdown?
It's deeper than just a personal grudge. Remember how we were talking about the whole idea of slave morality versus master morality?
Yeah, how could I forget?
Well, Nietzsche saw Christianity as the embodiment of slave morality taken to the extreme.
Because Christianity emphasizes things like humility, forgiveness, turning the other cheek. He saw all of that as weak.
Not weak, exactly. He argued that this focus on sin, guilt, and the promise of a better afterlife. It encourages people to deny their earthly desires, their instincts, their will to power.
So instead of living fully here and now, he felt like Christianity was all about, what, waiting for something better after you die.
That was a big part of his critique, for sure. He felt like it devalued this life, this world, in favor of some idealized afterlife.
I can see how that would rub some people the wrong way. But Nietzsche, he always went for the jugular, didn't he? No filter.
Definitely not known for being subtle. But even though his writing can be, provocative, to say the least, I think it's important to look beyond the shock value and try to understand what he's actually getting at.
So when it came to Christianity, what was he really trying to do? I mean, was he advocating for everyone to just, abandon religion altogether?
It's not that simple. He wasn't necessarily saying everyone should just drop their religious beliefs. I think it was more about getting people to really examine those beliefs, to understand how they might be shaping their lives, even if it's unconscious.
So like a wake-up call. Hey, are these really your values, or are you just going along with what you've been taught, kind of thing?
Exactly. He wanted people to be more deliberate, more conscious about what they believe and why.
And to live in a way that's true to themselves, right here, right now, which, now that we've gone on this whole Nietzschean journey, kind of feels like the core of it all.
It really does. He challenges us to question everything, embrace our will to power, create a life worthy of repeating, and maybe even become something more than we ever thought possible.
To strive for that Übermensch ideal, it's a lot to take in.
It is. But that's Nietzsche for you. He makes you think. He pushes you to confront those big, uncomfortable questions. And I think that's something we could all use a little more of, even today.
Absolutely. So next time you see that mustache, remember there's a whole world of challenging and, dare I say, life-changing ideas behind it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.